I'm a big fan of kicking systems, but there are some times where jump shot might be better. So let's talk about a couple of different jump shots. The first thing, let's talk about jump cues. So some jump cues are going to come with an extension that you can snap on for a slightly longer cue. These are very helpful, especially for the taller players. I don't happen to have that disability at 5'4", but if you do, getting one with an extension might be useful. Some of the things that all good jump cues are going to have in common is a very hard tip. Generally, it's going to be a larger tip as well than a shooting cue because people tend to be a little bit less accurate, so it gives you a bigger sweet spot. It's going to be light, very light cue. In fact, some of the easiest jumps that you can do is just with a shaft, a 4-ounce shaft. Never mind having the extension and even that additional weight. And all jump cues are going to have a different type of balance point than a shooting cue would, where the weight would normally be near the grip of a shooting cue. A jump cue, the weight's a little bit more forward, helps keep you down because jumps are always going to be done elevated. So there are two basic types of jumps that we can do. One is using the dart method. And the dart method is a little bit easier for most people. The way we're going to grip, imagine you're holding your cue just like a dart. You're going to throw it. See how not all the fingers are on there? It's kind of resting on my third finger. My index finger is holding it in one direction, my thumb's holding it in the other, and it's just kind of resting here. And using this, if you were to throw a dart, this is the way that you'd be throwing it, because this allows the cue to pivot within your fingers. With the jumps, we're normally going to be using more of a wrist snap, especially with that dart type of stroke. It's not going to be so much from the elbow. If you lock that wrist and you try to do the elbow, it's going to be very difficult to keep the cue on the same line. And as we know from a follow through, following through is not about following forward. It's more about following all the way through from the tip contact till tip release on the same line, same speed of the cue ball. So there's a few different types of bridges that we can do that you'll learn in our elevated cue mechanics demonstration. My favorite type of bridge to use for an open type of shot is the tripod. Some people do the tripod by placing their index and middle finger together, and then the fourth and the fifth finger. And the thing about this that I don't particularly like, as far as maybe the way that my fingers are set up, is I don't feel as stable because these fingers can roll. If I'm not holding my wrist locked, it seems to be unstable to me. So my version of the tripod bridge, which some people like, and this is my preference, is I take my third and fourth finger and I fold them in. And so now I'm kind of doing one of those rock and roll signs. There's two of my points of contact, index and pinky. And now all I'm going to do is I'm going to plant those third and fourth fingers down. And by doing this, now I have 3 points of contact, and I don't wobble nearly as much. And in doing this, I can then wiggle my hand, my thumb over to create that V that I need. So we'll start off with the first type of jump, which is the dart. And with the dart, I'm going to be using my tripod bridge that I just demonstrated with the open hand, and I'm going to be using an elevation of at least 45 degrees. You need a higher elevation the closer that the ball is that you need to jump in order to be able to get more clearance. And this is not going to be a soft shot. A softer shot will get the cue ball airborne, but is it going to be enough to clear a full ball, especially when it's only 8 inches away? Probably not. So don't be gentle with this. Do follow through all the way. And as you're practicing these, get yourself a cloth shield because you don't want to damage the cloth. For jumps, you are not required to run into the cloth with your cue. It may happen sometimes, especially as you're practicing, but you'll probably find that it's not necessary. So find the balance point of your cue, and I just like to bring my hand a little bit further back from that way more of the weight is towards the front. And one of the things I like to practice is just getting this wrist nice and loose. And just go back and forth really fast, just let my hand find its way. And then I can start doing the same thing with a cue in my hand, and that's going to transfer that muscle memory over. So when I come in here to my shot, I'm able to effectively get that cue launching. Now, one of the ways that you may want to try and aim these shots is to come into it low first and then transfer up. Now that we're going to talk about that with the American style grip. And the American style grip, if you're tall enough, you might do underhanded. For me, I'm bit shorter as we discussed. And so a side arm is going to be a little bit more effective for me because it's going to be easier for me to come across sideways than to try and get all the way up underneath. I'm just not that tall. I'm going to be tiptoeing. I'm not going to be very effective. So as I do an American style grip, I can use that same type of bridge, but I'm going to be coming in at sidearm. My elbow's still not going to move, just like with any other type of mechanics. And I'm going to try and launch that ball by driving my cue straight through that line with my elbow very still and coming in sideways. So there you have it. There's a couple of different ways you can jump. More important than any lesson that I can give you is practice. Practice, practice, practice. Jumping is not hard. Jumping accurately is more challenging. Jumping with control, if you want to follow or draw, that takes even more training than that. But just to get the cue ball airborne, practice, practice, practice. And give me a shout if you have any questions. As always, I'd be happy to help you out with that. It's not difficult to get the cue ball airborne. It's difficult to do it accurately.